right. And it'll be like a 20-second delay, so
Okay.
it's a little weird.
Okay, that's okay.
Usually,
Do they have option to comment?
yes, and we'll see them.
Oh, good.
Actually, no, we won't. Because we're not actually. I don't know. I've actually never done it like this. All right, we can't see. All right, so we're back, everybody. We're gonna try this another way. There have been some challenging issues with technology, which is why it's always very fun and it takes some patience sometimes when you go live. But we're here and I am going to see if I can pull you up. There we go. All right, so in case you did not hear earlier, we are here at Lala Gardens, and this is the steward and founder of Lala Gardens, Christina Trout. She is my longest and dearest friend, and I have been really excited to share her wisdom with you because she's the first person who told me that we are human beings, people are like plants. So listen to the quote in the first attempt and we'll rock it from here.
Sounds great. I'm ready to rock it.
So because it was a little bit shocking to hear that we are like plants, can we kind of start to orient everyone and explain what that means?
Yeah, it's pretty profound when you really start to think about it. But I feel like over my life, of course, in my life, I've had a better relationships with the plant world than I have with the human world. So I had a natural affinity for plants from a young age. So, it didn't come as a surprise. Like, I understand when people say they can talk to plants and
sorry.
Technology. See, plants don't work through this modality at all. They have a separate signaling system, but they do have a signaling system.
They have their own internet that does not involve. They have
their own internet of things, and so do we. And it seems like we need to bring them into the material and be manifestors, of things that are already out there in the world and in creation, right? But yeah.
So plants get stressed just like humans.
Yeah, everything is stressed in this world. Everything comes into this material plane with the potential to be stressed if they're not in connection with their environment.
And you shared something. We talk a lot about stress on Hemp Your Health because it really impacts our health, our immune system, our endocannabinoid system. And you shared with me that plants recover from stress. And can you share a little bit about how they get stressed and how they recover?
Sure. I started to recognize that every time I put a plant through a stress, because I have grown cannabis historically since 2007 as a caregiver here in Colorado, and I'm highly experimental, and I always grow at least 30 varieties at any given time. So I've had a lot of observation under my belt, but it just seems like every stress that you give a plant, it takes about a week recovery. So there is definitely this process that the plant has to go through to kind of like regain its footing in any new scenario. And what's brilliant about nature in general is that there are different mechanisms in place to help us cope with stress, that nature works in a decentralized way, and she also works through like a set of redundancies. And so the plants, just like we have different modalities through which they sort of come into balance again with their environment. And I think we're seeing at this late stage in our, with so many stresses, so many pollutants, so many things that are happening in our environment, that these stresses are showing up more and more. They're stacking on each other, right? And with a person, if they're, they're having metabolic distresses that are like stacked and stacked and stacked. So we're trying to treat the symptoms of these stresses rather than going back to the original sort of like, okay, let's start really getting plants and people back into a state where the environment is actually supporting them, and the route to get there is so much quicker than we really know. And I think plants are informing me of how quickly we can reestablish our biomes, not only in our guts, but the biome that is the soil, and the plants will respond to that. So a plant, yes, it takes about a week for a plant to respond to stress, but if you're giving that plant the environment that it needs to thrive, then it's going to come back not only to full balance, but also with a memory inherent inside of itself that's going to inform its generations ahead. So
almost like the plant has its own immune system.
Yep. A plant has an immune system.
So we are a lot like plants. And for us, we talked a few weeks ago on a Facebook Live that we're bombarded with about 70,000 different chemicals a day. And that's internally and externally from the things that we breathe and eat and the chemicals and all the stuff that they're doing with food. So our environment has definitely been stressed. And when I say our environment, our endocannabinoid system, our immune system, our nervous system, our microbiome. We are more bacteria than we are cells, just like plants.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting too, because when you take a person who's been sort of raised, and you were talking earlier about, we're going through our vaccines or just the kinds when we're put on antibiotics from an early age, that we're really taking out a big chunk of that metabolic system that's in place to help us sort of deal with stresses in a way. So plants too, like, we've got these like corn, for example, or soybean, we've got it to such a point where we've taken the plant's natural environment away. We've taken away its relationship. Yeah, exactly. We've taken away its relationship with the microorganisms in the soil, and we've started to give it chemical inputs, just like we feel like we have to feed the world, or we have to
take antibiotics, or prescription drugs.
Exactly. So we don't. It's kind of like a false. It's kind of like a false scenario, because what that does is create plants that are no longer as nutritious, plants that will trigger allergic responses in our body, plants that no longer have a relationship with their environment, that are basically drugged just like people are.
Plants get addicted to sugar.
They get addicted to chemical inputs if you're not, providing them with the microbiome that they need as well.
And let's back up for a second, because some people may not know what the microbiome is. And the microbiome is the system within us that signals with bacteria to bacteria, beneficial, neutral, and negative bacteria. Like we always have a certain amount of E. coli in us, but when those ratios get out of balance, then so do our signals. And they can put stress on us, and they can do things like create excess yeast and brain fog and neurodegeneration, etc. So when plants have the right environment, they actually provide better nutrients to the soil, to the air, to the humans. And the way that we're like plants is that we have to be banging on all cylinders optimally, because we are thinking, living, and breathing beings that put energy out there just like plants.
Yeah, and kind of what's fascinating is that life wants to thrive. Life wants to reproduce, and that's what life is, and so when we have these disease conditions in plants or people or in our soils, they're the mechanisms that are in place to compensate and to sort of get back to a thriving environment. So when you're talking about like when a body's dealing with cancers or yeast infections or things like that, those are generally a condition of having killed off all the beneficial microbes that are in succession beyond those anaerobic conditions or conditions that are trying to thrive in an anaerobic or an acidic environment. It's the same with plants. So for instance, like if you're tilling soil, you're killing a lot of the beneficial microbes or the fungi and the hypha that are very delicate, and you're basically signaling to that soil medium that you're going into a more heavily bacterial dominant environment. But there's always this attempt to succeed. And so diseases can arguably be sort of compared to life just trying to survive in those conditions that it's been given, which are anaerobic and
what do you
acidic.
think the equivalent to tilling the soil is in the human body?
a massive dose of antibiotics, like the minute you dig.
And here's the thing, we've all taken antibiotics, right? And especially they did this study with mice, and they gave them the most common antibiotics that children get for ear infections, respiratory illnesses, and diarrhea. And what they found was that the antibiotics actually deconstructed us as humans a little bit. It affected how our brains developed. It affected our immune system, how we deal with stress, etc. And so we can all, here's the beautiful things about humans and plants. We have the ability to heal when we put ourselves and our planet and our soil in the right environment.
Absolutely, because the body wants to heal all together, all at once. Plants also want to thrive all together, all at once. So yeah, it's about creating the environment or just re-establishing the environment that was indigenous to that original.
We talk a little bit about the endocannabinoid system is our root system. It digs deep, it touches everything, it co-regulates and co-facilitates signals. Something's out of balance. How do I get it back into balance? Is it inflammation? Is it a neurotransmitter, etc.? Is it a hormone? So can you explain how important a root system is for a plant?
Well, it's sort of like, it's like, let's take a look at the whole environment. It's like, it's just, for instance, in Korean natural farming, which is what I practice, I learned it from Chris Trump a couple of years ago in practice of this. But one of the applications is taking the top 4 inches of a plant before dawn and mixing that with a ratio of sugar to basically, the sugar acts like a salt to draw out the enzymes and the hormones that are present in that top 4 inches of the plant. Well, what's happening there? You've got basically T cells that are happening in the top growth of that plant. And that's where it's an undifferentiated fluid where anything's possible. You've got
a stem cell.
Yeah, it's like a stem cell. So
we have those.
Yeah, we have those. That's our healing mechanism. And that undifferentiated part of it is the part that is sort of potent with the ability to mutate and go and serve in the ways that we need it to, because life is just in the moment like that and rejuvenated like that. So in those top 4 inches before the sun hits it, all those enzymes are being produced. So the plant is basically producing all of that material and then sending it down through the plant to the root system and creating exudates like sugars and metabolites that it then feeds all of the microorganisms that are happening in the rhizosphere right along that root. So the plant is responding to its environment from the day before, whatever the conditions of the season. They're sending those signals down through those hormones and enzymes to the root to communicate with the life in the soil, and then sending that life out to gather what that plant needs at any given time. So what a beautiful orchestration. So it's all about communication. It's all about community. It's all about stacked functioning and having all these, different systems to get the plant what it needs. And so this
is so profound, because the sum of the whole is always greater than the parts. And in Western medicine, we always try to reduce something to one system. Oh, it's the immune system. Oh, it's my hormones. Oh, it's my nervous system. Oh, it's this. And we are actually inside and on our skin one big community. And our root system, the human body's endocannabinoid system, is doing exactly this. It's pulling, connecting, and listening to all the information that we're getting from the outside world and from our inside environment. And it's cross-talking, just like the soil and the roots cross-talk to the top of the plant down to the other plants next to it. And they figure out what they need to feed, thrive, recover, etc., so that their life cycle is as abundant as possible. And that's what we're trying to share here at Hemp Your Health, that our systems co-regulate and co-facilitate with the endocannabinoid system, which is our root system.
Beautiful. That's gorgeous, Christy. Oh my goodness, that sets us up so well.
Did I spit it out okay?
I really like that.
I've been trying to like say this in a way that even I understand it, because we were talking earlier that the endocannabinoid system, it's a little etheric at times.
Yeah.
It is the mind-body bridge.
Yeah.
And just like the roots, and people don't understand how important the soil is because they just try to kill the weeds.
Yeah, and they don't understand that those weeds are there to reestablish balance. Because what's happening when you destroy the fungal dominance, because our life is always in succession from a bacterial dominant to a fungal dominant. So in your old growth forests, you're going to find a fungal dominant environment. In your weed systems, you're going to find a bacterial dominant. So when you first dig, you're going to kill all the hyphae, you're going to kill all the fungal. It's going to go bacterial dominant. Well, what's going to immediately come into a bacterial dominant is a weed or a cancer or a virus or a pathogen, because those are basically opportunistic organisms that are going, because nature abhors a void. Nature is always wanting to be filled with life. Now, if the only life available, because you've killed all the fungal dominance or all the diversity in your systems, whether they be body or plant, then you're basically going to be creating an imperfect environment for cancer and for pathogens and for weeds. And then we're reacting by killing the weeds, and all we're doing is just making it more bacterial and like keeping it in that successive state and not allowing it to progress forward.
So this is really important, because you can't fix a human being or a soil or an environment overnight. You've got to be really willing to experiment, be very curious about your health, and try a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. Health, just like the soil, takes a journey. Mm-hmm. And I've been working on my health for 30 plus years. And it's definitely, it's just one of those things that once you start to heal and feel better, and you start to get more intuitive about what's wrong or what's going right or what your next step is, keep listening, because we are that signaling system inside ourselves that knows what's happening to our environment inside and out. And there's wisdom to gather from the outside world in our inside world to keep that journey successful. And sometimes plants feel worse before they feel better, just like humans.
Oh my goodness, it's so true. I've got an example of that out in my garden. I thought I was going to have a Garden of Eden this year, and no, it's been interesting.
So don't feel like when you start healing that it's going to be like sunshine and rainbows. Because as we get rid of toxins, as we clean up our soil and our environment, as stuff falls away, sometimes it just doesn't, it's just letting you know it's leaving your body. That's normal. It's called a healing crisis. Yeah. And it happens to plants, and it happens to our environment, and nature has its own way of hitting the reset button. And just be patient with yourself. This whole thing is about helping you heal yourself, because that's where health happens.
True. And diversity is king always, or queen always. Like, always think about diversity. Like, all our problems are coming from a lack of diversity.
Wow.
So
that's gorgeous,
isn't it though? I mean, really, it's the bottom line, because we've only named less than 5% of all the microorganisms in the soil, and we do not know how they're acting in concert, but we do know that they are acting in concert. So the more of a concert we can sort of bring into our own bodies and into our environment by increasing diversity, or the chance for diversity, is really where you're going to start to see like systems starting to work together. And it's not just fixing one system and then the next. It's about creating an environment where diversity can thrive.
Yes. And this just reminds me too, like, you want to go as high up and start with the good stuff, right? Mm-hmm. We're not trying to, the immune system is viruses, bacteria, pathogens, parasites. but it's the ratio that
Ratios,
matters.
right? Exactly.
And if something's bad and it's taking all of your attention and it's creating a disease or an itis or a symptom or a condition, try not to just go after it and killing it.
Yeah.
Try to get more good stuff in.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's all about. And I mean, we're at such a kind of we are dealing with such a sort of an attack on diversity in a way that we are kind of falling into something that's going to be a new area for us to really start exploring, and that's dealing with what happens in an environment when you don't have the diversity, or you don't have the oxygen, or you have an acidic, or you have conditions that are not conducive to a diversity of life. Well, you still have the operation of cooperation. You've got these bacteria that will actually come in and start working together as a community. They will actually commit suicide almost to be in a cooperative environment to do the very job of farming nutrients from the clays to then make them bioavailable to the plants. But that's also and so those are called anaerobic bacteria sometimes, which is very scary. And when you look at inside a human system, candida, one of the things they don't tell you about candida, and arguably even cancer, which I'm not making any claims here at all. I'm only basing it on observation. There could be a correlation where even at those kinds of disease systems, there's a kind of cooperation at work that is only trying to preserve life.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're dealing with some of these really difficult problems, it's going to take a minute to get those other types of organisms to start operating. So yeah, patience is definitely the key there. Anyway, I know I was going pretty deep on that one, and there's a lot to unwrap there, but
that's okay. That just reminds me that we don't get sick by accident.
No, we don't.
And just because you are sick or have been sick, or something's in your pipeline, just know that with the right ingredients, even like a full spectrum hemp is a food. Cannabis is a food. Look at your food. Look at your micro and macronutrients. Look as far upstream as you can. And that absolutely involves the endocannabinoid system, because it is the co-regulator and co-facilitator of all these systems. And if something is out of balance, your body needs to be signaled. Does the immune system need to kick in? Does the nervous system need to kick in? Does the microbiome need to kick in? Do we need more beneficials? And so this is, I was just trying to break down what you were saying, because it was deep and it's powerful. And this is exactly why plants are like people, because we rely on our inner and outer network to figure out what's going on. And if something's bad is going on, or we don't get sick by accident, but we need to start paying attention.
Yeah, definitely. And the signaling, I mean, let's talk a little bit about that, because, it's like the signaling is so important. And can I bring this book into our consciousness?
And we'll wrap it up in about 5 minutes, but this is really important because this is one of my favorite books too.
But this Regenerate by Sayurji really sort of brings home a new level of understanding to how the signaling is taking place, and how profound that is, and how constant it is. And the operation of RNA, for example, to sort of be able to travel between species from the most anaerobic soils up through the soils and in and through the plant, expressing color and expressing even into its seed multi-generationally. And our RNA is constantly signaling to even our progeny forward going, what the conditions are that we were facing, so that they can, and that's where mutations sometimes come in, because our bodies are constantly trying to evolve in relationship to our environment. So the signaling capacity is hugely important. So I'm really excited to explore with you the endocannabinoid system on that level, just as it is kind of a signaling pathway for us to have communication with the plants that we ingest. Like, that's beautiful.
And the plant that's within us too.
Yeah, right? We are
So-
plants and plants are us.
Christina,
Yep.
how do people get a hold of you if they want to contact you for more information?
I have an IG account that I'm pretty active on, Lala Grows, and I'm also really embracing a new app, Hi Curious, HI-Curious. It's a cannabis friendly environment, and I'll be having a show and some breakout groups there to explore some of these things and really go deep on some of the soil stuff that I'm learning, and do it as a community so that we can do some crosstalk in a safe environment.
Yep.
So yeah, Hi Curious is really one of my favorites right now, but and I also have a website, lalagardens.com.
And remember too that our special guest also
Oh, yay.
is let's see if we can get her in there. Dogs have endocannabinoid systems too. And so even though we're talking more about plants and humans, remember that your pets need good environments, good food, good hemp, and that they can heal themselves also.
True.
All right.
Great. Thank you, Christy.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your patience. Remember, we have this amazing special, buy one, get one free of the 600 tincture. Join our team. We need more people like you out there explaining how you can hemp your health. Mwah. See you next week.